Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I could just jump around then in terms of roles in your career and everything.
Absolutely.
So first thing I can ask, do you have a special story of how you got into SAG?
Oh, into SAG. I was doing I got cast as a mother, I believe, a mother character in a project called The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, and it was Eric Idle was in it. It was an animated feature, and that was my SAG initiation.
And when you
So
did,
it wasn't a super special, like, there
yeah,
wasn't a huge story behind it. It was just the director called and said, "Hey, you want to audition for this?" I did, and ended up booking it. So yeah.
I know that when you did switch to predominantly doing voiceover, that you got into doing ADR for major film pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, I did a good 12, 13 years of ADR. A lot of stuff that isn't on IMDb. Like I'm the opening voice that you hear on the movie Drive.
Yeah.
That's how I got The Purge, came from an ADR gig. And then they just kept using me, throughout that. And then they wrote a role for me in the series and flew me out to New Orleans and had me open season two. Um, so yeah, that I did a lot of stuff there. I did lots of episodes of Californication and Entourage and Good Wife and Gotham and Gilmore Girls and stuff like that. Yeah, those were good years right there.
So when you did start doing anime work, did you take the dubbing a lot easier then?
Well, I actually started dubbing first.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I was a pretty hot dubber right out of the gate because I'm musical
Yeah.
and dubbing is so rhythmic. So I could see it. Unfortunately, I think in the very beginning stuff that I did, I'm a little too staccato because I could see exactly where the flaps were. And instead of, being able to make that a smooth situation. So I think it actually, although it helped, it also kind of hindered, and I had to kind of balance that out.
And was your first anime GTO?
It was. Yeah, that was so I came out here to be I did a lot of Broadway stuff. And then I came out here to sing in commercials for jingles. And that was right at the time that they were switching over and like licensing pop music instead of writing original jingles. And so that kind of fizzled right out of the gate. And then I met a writer who said, I'm adapting, a script for an anime. I can get you an audition. And I said, okay. And at the time we thought that character was going to be the lead in the show, and then she's not. But it was also a first time director, and it was a first time female director. And she said, I'll take a risk on you. And that's how I got into that.
Were you aware of what anime was at all prior to getting into it, or?
Honestly, I think people were still calling it Japanime at that point. At least that was the term that I had heard when I first started. So, I mean, I watched Speed Racer with my dad when I was a kid. So I had seen it, but I was not by any means a connoisseur or very knowledgeable about it. It wasn't the big thing that it is now, you
Yeah.
know. It's just kind of a different, that was a different time. So
I would
because
think.
I'm not 20.
I would think too that one of your first major roles in anime would have been the Paprika film.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one that I wish I had a do-over on. I feel like now I understand what it is. I didn't understand the magnitude of how important that particular feature was and the significance that it held in the genre. And then, to get to do it with Yuri Lowenthal was great. But I would like a do-over on that one. I feel like I could have been better. That's the one that when people say, is there anything? And I'm like, paprika. because it's a good movie,
Right.
it's good. So I really would have liked to have been able to give it my best, being a little bit more experienced at the time. Yeah.
Do you remember what your first video game, like major video game part would have been?
Ah, I know that Guild Wars 2 was one of my very first ones. Um, and then Clive Barker's Jericho, which we all thought was just going to explode and be this huge game. And it just didn't have the legs to do it, I guess. I'm not sure what happened there. Um, but I really, those were two of the early ones. And the reason why I remember that so specifically is the toll it took on my voice, because they were, the Jericho role was down here, and she was, kind of a female Jack Nicholson. And I came into a pickup session, and it was 500 lines, and they wanted 3 takes of each at different volumes. And it took me 3 days to recover from that. And then also, I remember on Guild Wars 2, not knowing to say, how long do you want the scream? How long do you want me to be electrocuted and set on fire and then shaken, like from my left leg? How long do you need that to be? And then they weren't sure. So it was kind of like all over the place. And now I know to ask those questions first, before just jumping in and doing it. Because I remember how long it took my voice to recover at that point.
That does make me think to ask, what do you think the cases where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly for a role?
The most significantly, I mean, those were 2 big ones. I've always had a big voice. I mean, I'm only 4'11" and my voice is 6'2". So I get those kind of roles, and I did get those kind of roles. Also, I'm not afraid to scream. I've done a lot of the looping stuff that I did. I did a lot of horror films, and I do some monster work and things like that. So those are probably, the screamy things, but learning how to do it correctly, that's probably the biggest stuff that I've had to alter. Just learning how to scream correctly, so I can have, the rest of my week still be available for work.
And do you have a particular process of for whenever you personally do voices?
Process. I mean, I think for any of us that do it, for as long as we've been doing it, we can kind of just fall into that. The big questions that I would ask on that are, do you need a cartoony voice? Do you need a real voice? Does it need to be a cinematic read, or what are we trying to convey? But, I mean, I kind of sound like this anyway. So just a little bit of an affectation, and all of a sudden you got a kid.
That's why it is really interesting that Ken and Persona, that's kind of like just your
Yeah.
natural voice almost.
Yeah, it is. It is. I
Well,
like
on the topic of Persona, do you think that you have more affinity between him or Labrys?
Honestly, Labrys is the one that I really connected with, and that meant a lot to me. I got a really wonderful email regarding Labrys. Also, there's something about going into that studio and doing the Persona projects that there's always been a major life event that has happened to me when I have to come in and record that particular franchise. And on the first one, my dog died. And I mean, I was a wreck. So all of that stuff, all of the emotion came from a very real place. So yeah, we laugh about that a little bit. But Labrys was a big deal to me because of a fan letter that I received. And it was somebody that said, I am autistic. And it was the first time that I felt like there was a character that understood me. And when you cried, I cried. And when you laughed, I laughed. And I feel like I'm half AI sometimes. And that was, I mean, I still have that letter. I still have it. And that was years ago, because that's why we do it, I hope. And that's why I do it, is that maybe maybe we can touch somebody, maybe we can give somebody something to anchor onto, you know, and become and help them with an emotion that maybe is hard or troubling or something. That's very important to me.
Do you think then that you do you prefer working on more dramatic projects opposed to comedy, or
Right now, yeah, I think I really like the chewy stuff. Um, right now, it goes in waves. I mean, if it's really well written comedy, the writers on Sonic Boom, I mean, I can't say that I would ever turn that down, to go and cry my eyes out in in therapy that I'm getting paid for. Um, but I love really well written comedy too. I love it because then our job is so much easier,
Mm.
you know.
And well, and talking on like major long running characters, who do you think that you relate the most to? Is it Amy?
Amy, 100%. 100%. It's Amy. They were so kind and they allowed Amy to evolve and grow up a little bit and basically be a badass, and take care of herself. And I think girls need to hear that. And I need to hear that sometimes. So, yeah, I really think Amy. The other thing that was cool about Sonic Boom was that the writers were in the room. And so they saw us and they wrote for us, which is a really special thing, when you get that kind of attention so that they cater to you, to what you do. So it all just really works in sync, as opposed to having to create something out of nothing. And I've been doing Amy long enough now that the old stuff, there are people that prefer that. That's totally cool. But we've been able to evolve now. And so I think that she's got her own pretty original stamp based on what we did on Boom.
And one of my friends wanted me to ask specifically about Amy. They noticed that in Frontiers, you got to explore her more
Mhm.
in a certain kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. Ian wrote a great script and it is, she's a little deeper and darker, she's a little more present and grown up and and just kind of on her own 2 feet. And I really think that's important. Yeah.
Was that when you did first get the role of becoming Amy? Was that more involved of a process?
That was just, I mean, everybody was just kind of looking for what, is it more of what they've already done? Is it something new? What's gonna work? What's not gonna work? Amy went through a couple of different inventions, you know. She got reinvented several times until they found the pocket, which I think that she's really in right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
So going back to the timeline, do people really talk about on my Buddha very much to you? Or?
My Buddha. No, it's interesting. I'll have fans come up and they'll have the case and they'll be like, "Remember this?" And I'm like, "Barely." Yeah, oh goodness. I believe now I do not have the best memory, so I just want to throw this out there right now, right? So anything that I'm telling you, I think this is on my Buddha. But it was a script with a director who would just go, in the control room over there. He would just be like, "Keep talking." So a lot of it was I would see that she was still flapping and just keep going. Those words weren't necessarily on the page. So what's your memory of "On My Buddha"?
It's a cute show. I mean, it's one of those shows that's like, sexy, I guess.
Yeah,
That's the right word.
yeah, yeah.
But it's cool that that was like one of your earlier leads too.
Yeah, I just, I said yes to everything. When this started, I didn't really know that voice acting was a career. Like maybe I thought 10 people did it because when I grew up, it was, Mel Blanc did all the voices for Looney Tunes, and same thing with the Yogi Bear stuff and all of that. That was Dawes Butler. So I just kind of thought it wasn't really a thing. And then it turned out to be much more of a thing. So I just said yes to everything. You know, to me, it was work. It was work. It was bridging the gap from Broadway, you know, into doing full-time voiceover.
I do think the first thing that I instilled your voice in my head though was Marmalade Boy.
Marmalade Boy. Wow. Okay. I remember where we did that. That was actually the same director that did GTO. And
Okay,
that's how I got Marmalade Boy. She's like, here you go. Come on in. So yeah. Wow. I haven't heard that name in a long time either.
Is there any kind of if you knew him very well, do you have any kind of like tribute memory of Michael Lindsay?
He was one of the kookiest, filter-free people I'd ever met, and was very funny and just an explosion of energy anytime you saw him. Yeah, that kind of hurt my heart, that news, when I heard that. So he hadn't been around for a little while. I hadn't seen him in a long time when I found out that things were not 100%. And so, you know, fly with the angels, Michael, and say inappropriate things at all times, please, because we expect nothing less.
Did you meet Chris through doing anime too, or?
No, actually, well, I mean, yes and no. We did meet in the booth, but it was on a separate project. It was on a project called Math School, and it was down in El Segundo, and it was a group record, and it was at that point, it was CD-ROMs, y'all, CD-ROMs, and they were doing a whole series of teaching math. So it was little aliens and stuff, and we stood next to each other. We hit it off immediately, and we were friends for 10 years before it ever turned into anything, you know, like what we got going on now. But which is, for those of you who don't know, it's Chris Smith, and that's my husband. So yeah. Yeah. But no, we met in the booth, and we're buddies for 10 years. So
I know you've gotten to work on a good amount of anime together, but do you know if there's been a case where you guys have gotten to like talk to each other very much as characters, or?
oh, sure. I mean, we did Winx Club. We did Bloom and Sky in Winx
Okay.
a long time ago. And I believe there's some stuff. Yeah, in Elder Scrolls, I actually play one of his wives, Razumdar's or concubines or whatever, you know, some Khajiit. And it was funny. And I know this because he was doing a live stream of somebody playing the game, and he came in as Roz, and, you know, was sitting in on that. And I was in the other room, and we were doing, you know, the chat. And my character, out of 3,000 characters that could pop up, mine popped up. And I went, did they program this? And I looked at our voice director, and he's like, there's no way to do that. We just jumped in. And Chris didn't recognize my voice. And that was hysterical. And I'm sitting there on the chat going, she sounds familiar. And it's just going, whoosh, he does it. And he didn't even know that it was me, which I guess is a really, really a big compliment, you know, when you can fool your own husband. But at the same time, I was like, excuse me, sir. Hey.
Well, on the topic of fandom, I'm sure you probably didn't expect for Bleach to be as popular as it was, like your character too.
No, and then for her to be coming back in the reboot was like, oh, really? I always liked her. Honestly, none of this is what I expected. No, I didn't expect any of this fanfare or anything to be quite so big. So this is all just like, you know, a happy surprise. Going and meeting people and them wanting to, you know, say hi to us and everything. I literally just thought it was a job.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it had the life that it was going to have, you know. So this is all just a huge surprise. But I love Kukakishiba. She's great. She's badass.
Were you aware of what Sailor Moon was when you got cast in it?
I knew, I mean, of course, it was kind of one of the OG titles, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't an anime fan. I didn't really know what it was, like I've told you before. But Sailor Moon, of course, I'd heard of. When I got cast as Queen Beryl, didn't know, the magnitude of that. Um, Basically, I am the most ignorant voice actor on the planet. And so like I said, I just said yes. And then when it came into recording, it's like, oh, she's kind of like the villain, the original villain here. And I loved her. And I loved that all the animation does this. We laughed about this all the time. Oh. So yeah. And those are my favorite characters to play generally. Are those kind of like villainesses.
Was there anything that you could relate to her about?
Being bossy. um, she like all villains, that she's the hero of her own story.
Right.
She thinks she's doing the right thing. So just trying to find some way that wasn't that was making her human rather than just, the slithery voice, I think. That was important to me. So, but do I relate to her? I mean, yeah, I'm bossy too. I would like to be in charge of my kingdom.
Was in season 2 was Berthier just given to you then?
Yeah. Yeah. So was Sexy Jutsu and Naruto, stuff like that. A lot of these things, a lot of casting sometimes back in the day was because we record them in batches, usually batches of 5 episodes at a time.
Yeah.
And so it's budgetary. Especially when new characters pop up, it's like, oh, this is the budget that they have. These are the people that are coming in who can voice that, especially early on, and things like that. So, and then because Beryl didn't stay for the whole thing, they did want to bring me back, and because they're good people over there. So, yeah.
It is cool too that I think you're one of the few people that I'm aware of, at least, that you got to play like random monsters of the day in Sailor Moon for almost every season too.
Yes. Yeah, that's my jam. I love doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing the fun things. I'm not afraid of my instrument, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
After learning how to handle it with the screaming and all of that stuff, I like using it. So what I hate is when they go, "Can you scream?" And I do, and they're like, "Oh no, like a ah!" And I'm like, "Oh, come on, that's not real. Come on, let's put some guts behind it."
Yeah.
Hmm.
One of my signature questions that I hadn't gotten to yet is what do you think the darkest headspace you've had to go for a role is?
What's the darkest space I've had to go to?
Headspace, yeah.
That's a really good question. I'm not. There were a couple of times in looping, and I can't remember the exact project. But I had at one point I was married and my husband had passed away, and it was pretty much right after that. And there was a character at the top of some episode. And again, I wish I could remember, but me and my memory. But it was being told, a woman being told. And then she just kind of had to go off the rails and go, into this really emotional place. And without hesitation, my group leader said, "Cindy," and it wasn't far from the surface. So that was a pretty emotional performance. And I can't. Again, I try to treat all my villains like heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So because there's got to be something else going on besides they're just bad. Again, looping. Wow. I've done some Thai dubbing and horror films and stuff, which can get pretty dark. I did Rob Zombie's Halloween. I'm the voice of the hooker that gets her face smashed against the mirror. Just those kinds of things I think would probably be considered the darkest places that I've had to travel.
Well, in terms of anime, I know one of them would have been Vivi in Code Geass.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, with the late great Kevin Seymour directing. Yeah. That was a dark character. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I do remember the sessions. I have a tendency to remember the feelings after performances rather than the actual specifics. So, but yeah, I can remember coming out of that studio going, "Oh, it's light outside."
I know it's rare with anime, but have you gotten to perform with yourself in many cases?
Yeah. Can't I mean, yes, I have. But I can't remember the titles in anime so much. I mean, you run into yourself every once in a while. You do run into yourself. I did a whole kid series called Popples, where I played 2 of the Popples. There were 4 of them. And, they were all in the scenes together. One was a girl, one was a boy. I've done that quite a bit. But yeah, I've done that too.
Sure,
It's a good challenge.
Yeah. Well, I was about to ask if there's any funny stories related to Digimon, since you played so many characters on that.
Oh God, I don't remember specifically. Oh, you have such good questions, and I wish I could live up. No. I'm just going to be simple about it. No, I don't remember. And it's been a good 10 years, I think, since we recorded that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, and I know another major franchise that you got involved with really early on is Fire Emblem, and you played so many characters in that.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that one either, but yeah, that's something that's coming up a lot right now. People are coming up and asking about Libra or Aversa or Minerva. What's your experience with it? Is that a good game for you?
Yeah, I do a lot of one of the things I do with voice actor interviews, a lot of it is correlated to the Fire Emblem community. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
yeah, I have a
Oh, you sure do.
yeah.
Wow, that's great. Good art.
Do you know who Christian Lamont is?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, that's his character. So.
Okay. Yeah. Kristen's directed me a ton. I love Kristen. I've known him forever. Just forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Christian was he embarrasses very easily.
Yeah.
And so I just almost felt like it was part of my job to walk into my session and make him blush in some way, shape, or form. So that was salute to Christian. I love him with all my heart. So I hope he takes that in the spirit in which it was intended. But yeah, I love him.
Well, who do you think that you have in terms of your Fire Emblem characters? Who do you think you have the most affinity with?
I don't know. You're gonna hate me. I wish I had. Okay. I don't know. So describe those 3 that I talked about. I know one was the guy, one's the older lady, and then one was the gal.
Yep.
What do you think? Because just remind me. If you give me a heads up, then I might it might trigger something.
Yeah. Well, Libra is very interesting because that's a man that looks like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And Minerva, I think Minerva would be the strong, like battle axe redhead.
Well,
and then Aversa is the purple-haired, like fairy-looking type of.
Yeah. I think I have a very strong masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like those characters that that are a little ambiguous. That way, I used to play a lot of those characters because my voice was kind of in the mid-range there. The go-to for me, for everybody, they would call me to do kick-ass characters, warrior characters. that's kind of my wheelhouse. So that's the easy one for me. But now I'd like to go back and listen and revisit a little bit and see, see if my perspective has changed on that at all. That would be an interesting exercise to do.
Well, I was going to ask too, because there's two more roles. You also took over the roles that E.G. Daly originally played in Fire Emblem, Perry.
Yeah. Yeah, my voice pattern was similar to Hinoka or to EG. So that was kind of when they called. And again, I just kind of said yes to everything. But that was as I recall, there was like fan kerfuffle over that, because there are people that love one and that don't like the other. And so I try not to listen to that chatter, because everybody's entitled to their opinion, whatever. And just hopefully I can come in and do stuff justice. That's all I'm really concerned about.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Makoto in Blaze Blue?
Oh, I like Makoto. I mean, any girl with a squirrel tail, right? What are you gonna do? I like her. I like her a lot, and she's fun, and she keeps popping up every once in a while and coming back in, and those are always fun records. But yeah, no, I like that character. She's cute. Mm-hmm. She's cute, and then her little Gee buddy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I know this was early too, but people probably don't really talk about Blue Zola and Blue Dragon.
Okay, Blue Dragon. This one I do remember. I loved Zola. I wanted Zola to be I wanted that game to be much bigger than it ever got. Yeah. I really identified with her. I thought she was terrific. And I thought it was a really well-written character, as I recall. Yeah, she was awesome. And then I did the anime too. I'm not sure everybody from the game went over to the anime. But yeah, I really had higher expectations for that one. I wanted that to kind of take off. I loved Zola.
I think it was the same personally too. It was the same case with Moribito.
Okay, probably my favorite anime that I've ever had the privilege to voice. Oh, wow. Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed when I first got into doing anime was that they would start with these really strong women characters, and then they would kind of, acquiesce and be a little subservient a little later in the game. And because it was only 26 episodes, Balsa never did that. Mm-hmm. She was solid from start to finish. I thought that storyline broke my heart. She would have done anything for that kid. And then, of course, voiced by the amazing Mona Marshall. I really enjoyed that project. And that's really one of my favorites. And when people say, what should I watch to get started in anime? I'm like, watch this one. Yeah, it's really good.
Have you watched much of what you worked on? Or?
No. No, I don't like it. I saw GTO. I was like, oh, it's on here. Oh my God, turn that off. Yeah, boy, that was like early on in the game. And no, I just generally don't. I don't. It might be better if I did. But I just kind of like have the attitude of just, come on, bring on the next thing. And then learn on the job and just trust the people that I'm working with, to tell me that it's good or adequate or whatever. And then just kind of listen to what they say. I do like now that a lot of dubbing is very specific still, but they are going for a more legato kind of a read if you're a musical person, just things that are a little bit more connected. And we're going a little bit for performance. I think performance is so important. And I would choose a performance take. As a director, I choose a performance take over, a spot on sync take any day. Mm-hmm. So.
Have you gotten to sing an anime?
I've gotten to sing in a lot of things. I did. I'm one of the singers in Deadpool, the
Oh,
video
okay.
game. And then did some stuff in Sonic Boom. Trying to think. I mean, like they'll call me in to do, like just a little something, something in the background or whatever. If they need a singer in the role, then then I get the nod quite a bit. Paper Port, I think, was an anime that Christina V was the lead in, and I adapted all of the songs.
Oh,
They did a musical episode, and I adapted all the songs, and I've adapted songs for like BB and Tina um, on Amazon, and a lot of things for was it something that started with a V? Valeria, Veronica. Anyway, it was a Disney show, but it was a dub. So I've done a lot of musical adapting, lyric adapting on that. And then I'll go in and sing backup stuff, if they need me or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's anytime somebody just like needs a vocalist, it's like, oh, Cindy sings, and then it turns out to be it's not that difficult, It's they don't have Broadway shows generally animated for me to come in and dub.
I know there's a ton to choose from, but do you have any favorite directors like Michael Sorich or Tony Oliver?
Oh, I mean, that's like picking a favorite child. That's hard. Christy Reed was a terrific director for Moribito. She was great. Yes, I love Sorge. Sorge taught me how to do all of the efforts.
Oh,
We did a movie that I dubbed for him called Bloody Mallory, and it was the first time that I had ever done effort dubbing and all of that. And he coached me through it, and he's the one who taught me how to do it. And that's what I ended up doing for a ton of looping, was kicking and punching for other people. So he was great. Epcar's great. Ezra Weiss, Jamie Mortellaro. I know that somebody's going to hear this and just go, what about me? But yes, I can't name a favorite because they all come in and do wonderful things. Bob Buckholtz kept my career going forever.
oh.
He introduced me to everybody in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know back to characters. Tekken, Zafina.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah, she was cool. That kind of Middle Eastern vibe. Yeah, that mystical kind of a sultry thing was cool. Somebody actually sent me some really cool pictures of her recently. So yeah, I remember recording that too. That was great. That was great.
I didn't mean to ask when we were talking about Persona, with the Brooklyn accent that Labrys has. What was the inspiration for that? Or
Well, it's kind of Brick Boston.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hybrid in there because they wanted it to be kind of unique.
Mm.
So, and not that you could pinpoint in one location. I lived in New York for 12 years, doing Broadway stuff. So I was really familiar with that accent and that whole New England vibe. When I did Carousel, the accent was from Maine. So I just kind of melded the two together to make something that sounded a little bit like a machine. Because that was the whole basis for that, was how does she sound a little robotic? And those two kind of blend together to make that kind of metallic. To your ear, you might pick it up like a little bit of a metallic kind of a sound.
Yep. So I know most recently you had a cool character in a Brand New Animal on Netflix.
I did.
That's the anime where it's like everybody is like a human animal hybrid.
Okay. I haven't seen that, and I don't remember. A lot of times too, you got to remember we don't get titles.
Yeah.
So if that's what they changed it to, maybe. But cool. Yay!
What about a Testament of Sister New Devil?
Testament. I'll say that was one thing that happened, like, what, goodness, 7 or 8, 6, 7 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Wendy Lee directed it, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember too much about it, except that that I remember it was a little saucy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with content generally. I think there's a place, unless it's, awful and stuff like that. I have drawn the line at a couple of things. But that's the most that I remember about that, was the controversy over saucy content. So I was expecting it to be really saucy, and it wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, what was your takeaway on it?
That's usually, I mean, other people that I've interviewed in the cast too, they all say the same thing. They were like, "Oh, I was asked if I wanted to be part of this because of how like spicy it was, but then when I got it, it was like, oh, it's not really
Yeah,
that bad."
yeah, I've done way worse, as I recall.
Well, I guess probably the most like safest anime that you could talk about recently is being in the Bleach, right?
Yeah, yeah, the Bleach reboot. Yeah, because I mean, it's come out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised by that. I literally didn't know that she would be one of the characters that they brought back in. Good story, easy to work on, and had a really good time. Ryan directed that over at Studiopolis, and they were fun. I recorded it right there.
Yep. Is there anything else that's upcoming then that you're part of you can safely talk about, or?
No. No, I'm doing a lot of directing now. So
Okay.
I work a lot on Elder Scrolls Online. And I did a couple of games that'll be coming out, some mobiles that will be coming out. And then I'm working on a beta of a brand new thing that I definitely can't talk about, but it's going to be cool. Yeah.
Well, my final question then is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh. You mean character-wise or philosophy or what?
Both, usually.
She gave it her all, is what I really want to be known for. She doesn't half-ass it. But I don't know. I think it's yet to be written. Amy and Beryl are always going to be, two of my favorites. But yeah, I'm still looking for it, about what I want my absolute legacy to be.
Have you gotten any other fan responses similar to the Labrys letter that you could share? Or?
I mean, I've gotten some other really nice things. I've gotten a lot of little girls that come up and talk about Amy. And I had one little girl that actually brought me a rose recently, which I thought was spectacular. And she was like 7. And I find it interesting that a lot of the girls that I talk to are so shy.
Yeah.
And they just are so introverted. And for Amy to be that important to them, I just love. I'm like, let's just light that fire, ladies. Here you go. Be bold. So that would be that's a nice legacy too, to say that I inspired somebody in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I can say personally too, I haven't mentioned this for a while, but just being able to talk to a lot of people like you that I grew up with, listening to, and stuff that like anime saved me from suicide. So it just means a lot to talk to all you guys. So
yeah, art, man, art saves lives. It really does. I was a little girl born in Oklahoma and didn't belong there. Musical theater and art saved my life too. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for calling me. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
This has been a lovely interview.
Oh,
You're
thank you.
good at this. You're good at this. Right on.
Thank you. Well, hope you have a good rest of your day then.
I hope you do too. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.